to impose new tariffs on China, similar to the 50% total duties now slapped on Indian goods, a move triggered by India's ongoing purchase of Russian oil. Addressing reporters, Trump said he could target China next, depending on developments. Earlier on Wednesday, the White House announced an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports, on top of an existing 25% duty. Okay, we're now joined by Lily Liu, who's a CGTN anchor. She joins us live from Beijing. Thank you very much for joining us, Lily, here on NewsX World. Pleasure to have you. Let's get straight into this. US President Donald Trump has stated yesterday that he could impose further tariffs on China. What do you make out of this statement?
Well, actually, the impact of U.S. tariffs, if we look at the stock markets, on Asian stock markets, may be far less severe than had expected, because Asia is increasingly relying on its own internal trade dynamics to cushion external shocks. I mean, over the past decade, when we look at regional trade agreements, for instance, the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, it have deepened economic integration, supply chain diversification, especially into Southeast Asia, and that has reduced the dependence on the U.S. market. In the meantime, China and other Asian economies, they're also pivoting toward domestic consumption and intra-Asia exports. For example, we know that ASEAN is now China's top trading partner, surpassing both the US and the EU. So this shift means that US tariffs might simply accelerate a pre-existing trend and less dependency on Asian growth from US demand. And in the longer term, the bigger risk isn't just about tariffs, right? It's actually the erosion of US market relevance. As Asia's middle class expands, we know that its economies will trade more with each other, making American tariffs increasingly symbolic rather than substantive.
Yes, Lily, obviously we are seeing talks with Beijing and Washington on go with a reduced tariff deadline, reduced to around 30%. That's set to expire on the 12th of this month. If these talks between Washington and Beijing fail, what do you think will be the repercussions, and how do you think the Chinese government will respond?
Well, China has always advocated for resolving trade disputes through dialogue and consultation, as we firmly believe that cooperation benefits both sides, while confrontation can lead only to mutual losses. So the latest tariff threats from the US side not only violate the principles of free trade and the rules of the WTO, but it will inevitably backfire. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to harm American businesses and consumers just as much as they impact Chinese industries. We know that history has repeatedly shown that trade wars produce no winners. Unilateral tariffs can only disrupt global supply chains, drive up inflation, and ultimately slow economic growth for all parties involved.
Trump has imposed secondary sanctions on India for buying Russian oil, even when there are other nations doing the same thing. Why do you think this double standard exists?
Every country has the right to make independent decisions about its own energy security, and China has consistently opposed the use of unilateral sanctions, especially those that lacks a basis in international laws must be applied fairly. So energy cooperation is a sovereign right. No country should dictate the lawful cooperation of other nations under the cause of geopolitical competition. And China believes in fairness, justice, and non-interference, and we will continue to support the right of all countries to pursue independent and diversified energy partnerships.
Yes, Lily, do stay with us as we go over to the Asian Stock Exchange to take a look at some of the trends going on across the region. Let's start off with the SSE index, Shanghai's index, which is up 0.2% today, gaining 7.16 points in today's session. Obviously, we have reiterated that China is not in the same boat when it comes to these tariffs that have been imposed today. They do face an August the 12th deadline as trade talks between Washington and Beijing continue. We will now move over to Nikkei 225, which is Japan's index. We see more gain in confidence here, despite a 15% tariff imposed by the Trump administration on Tokyo, a gain of 241.75 points today and up 0.59%. So that is some gain in confidence in Tokyo's market. We now move over to Nifty 50, one of India's national indexes. However, this is something different we're seeing here. We're seeing a loss in confidence in the Indian market, much we can assume thanks to Donald Trump's additional imposed 25%, down 139 points today and 0.57%. And now we move on to India's second index, the NewsX index here, and now we see more loss in confidence here, down 443.47 points currently. That's a down of 0.55. Obviously, this comes after Donald Trump has imposed now a total of 50% tariffs on New Delhi. Lily, I wanted to come back to you just after reading those out. Obviously, in spite of Donald Trump's tariff, the vast majority, there seems to be a gain in confidence when it comes to the Asian market. The trend is that most stocks are not as disturbed by the tariffs as maybe the US president would think they are. What sort of impact do you think the tariffs will have?
As far as we can see, as I mentioned earlier, the impact of US tariffs on...
I believe we've had some technical issues there. Hopefully we get Lily back in just a second, but as we can see, especially in the Indian market, some loss of confidence in Mumbai at the stock exchange today. Down, Sensex is down 399 points, or a 0.5%. Right, we're going to move on now. I want to thank Lily Liu for joining us here on the program all the way from Beijing. We now move over